All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're going to go over moral letters to Lucilius, letter 12 from Seneca, and this one is on old age. Okay, so let's jump into this one. We'll see how relevant this one is to me as I'm advancing in my years here at 43. In verse 1, he says, "Whenever I turn, I see evidence of my advancing years. I visited lately my country place and protested against the money which was spent on the tumble-down building. My bailiff maintained that the flaws were not due to his own carelessness. Quote, he was doing everything possible, but the house was old. And this was the house which grew under my own hands. What has the future in store for me if stones of my own age are already crumbling?" Okay, so obviously here, he's gone back to his house, and he's got a caretaker there, and the caretaker is like, "Hey, look, it's not my fault, man. Like, it's just old stuff. It's crumbling. I've been taking good care of it." And now Seneca's like, "Well, what's going to happen if even stones? If I'm old enough that stones are getting old?" All right. So in verse 2, he says, "I was angry, and embraced the first opportunity to vent my spleen in the bailiff's presence." Quote, "It is clear," I cried, "that these plane trees are neglected. They have no leaves. Their branches are so gnarled and shriveled. The boles are so rough and unkempt. This would not happen if someone loosened the earth at their feet and watered them." The bailiff swore by my protecting deity that he was doing everything possible and never relaxed his efforts, but those trees were old. Between you and me, I had planted those trees myself. I had seen them in their first leaf. Okay, so he's saying here that he lost his cool, right? He doesn't want to believe that he's getting old, and this is the reason for it. So he's complaining at the bailiff, the person the steward for his property. He's saying, "Look, you should have done this, you should have done that." And he's like, "Look, man, they're old. I did everything I can. I promise you." And then Seneca goes on to admit, "Look, here's the deal. This is why I'm so upset." He's like, "Look, I planted those trees myself. I seen them from the first leaf. So if they're old trees now, then, man, I must be old." All right. Verse 3, he says, "Then I turned to the door and asked, 'Who is that broken down dotard? You have done so well to place him at the entrance, for he is outward bound. Where did you get him? What pleasure did it give you to take up for burial some other man's dead?' But the slave said, 'Do you know me, sir? I am Felicio. You used to bring me little images. My father, Philostius, was the steward, and I am your pet slave.' The man is clean crazy," I remarked. "Has my pet slave become a little boy again? But it is quite possible his teeth are just dropping out." So this is interesting as well, right? So it's a little bit hard to kind of understand what's going on here, but essentially, there's a doorman, kind of a house slave, I suppose at this time, that is at the entrance of his house, and he's saying here, what he's basically saying is like, who's this dead guy? Who's this guy that's on the way to the grave? Like, who's this really old person that is feeble, like, that you put in charge of the house? You think it's a good idea to take someone else's dead and make them the guardian of my house? I don't know. What are you doing here? And the guy's like, "Wait a minute. Do you even know me? I'm Felicio. Used to bring me little images." Okay. And he's and he's saying that that he's almost like become a boy again. His teeth are dropping out. So this guy's really aged a lot. He's really surprised by this. Okay. So apparently he's been away from his house for a long time. In verse 4, he says, "I owe it to my country place that my old age became apparent whithersoever I turned. Let us cherish and love old age, for it is full of pleasure if one knows how to use it. Fruits are most welcome when almost over. Youth is most charming at its close. The last drink delights the toper, the glass which souses him and puts the finishing touches on his drunkenness." So now he's sort of, making the best of it. He's like, "Look, actually, it's true that, hey, when a fruit is almost over, that's when it's the most ripe. Youth is most charming at its close. The last drink that you have, the one that puts the finishing touch on your drunkenness. Not that I drink anymore." He says that's the one. That's the best one. In verse 5, he says, Each pleasure reserves to the end the greatest delights which it contains. Life is most delightful when it is on the downward slope, but has not yet reached the abrupt decline. And I myself believe that the period which stands, so to speak, on the edge of the roof possesses pleasures of its own. Or else the very fact of our not wanting pleasures has taken the place of the pleasures themselves. How comforting it is to have tired out one's appetites and to have done with them. So what he's saying is that look, in life, after you've aged, and you're on that down slope, but before you've hit that rapid decline, that's the best time. That's what he's asserting here, and I'm not going to disagree with him since I'm 43. But it can be, right, if you know how to make the most of it, and that's what he's saying here. And he's saying also that, one good thing about it is that how comforting is it to have tired out one's appetites and to have been done with them, right? When you're younger, and I can tell you this, being 43 right now, I've got some ways to go, but you have all these desires, all these things that you want, and as you get older, as you experience life, you've done that. You've done this. You've made progress in life. Not everything is so exciting. Not everything is so exciting, but it's also not so. You need this, or you're wanting these things. You've satisfied these appetites. You've done these things, and now you don't have to worry about all this stuff. In verse 6, he says, "But you say, it is a nuisance to be looking death in the face. Death, however, should be looked in the face by young and old alike. We are not summoned according to our rating on the censor's list. Moreover, no one is so old that it would be improper for him to hope for another day of existence. And one day, mind you, is a stage on life's journey." So he's saying here that, look, people are saying, oh, it's a nuisance to look death in the face. That's not good. And he's saying that, look, everyone should be doing it. Whether you're young or old, you should still be looking death in the face. That's the point. That's what you should be doing as a Stoic. And he's saying that no one's so old that he shouldn't hope for another day of existence. That is true. So let's go on and see what he says here. Okay, our span of life is divided into parts. It consists of large circles enclosing smaller. One circle embraces and bounds the rest. It reaches from birth to the last day of existence. The next circle limits the period of our young manhood. The third confines all childhood in its circumference. Again, there is, in a class by itself, the year. It contains within itself all divisions of time, by the multiplication of which we get the total of life. The month is bounded by a narrower ring. The smallest circle of all is the day, but even a day has its beginning and ending, its sunrise and its sunset. So what he's saying is there's phases of life, and essentially there's this big circle, which is your whole life, and within that there's this smaller circle, which is your young manhood, and then you have your childhood, and then within each one of those is at the smallest level a day, which has a beginning and an end as well. Okay. In verse 7, he says, "Hence Heraclitus, whose obscure style gave him his surname, remarked, quote, 'One day is equal to every day.' Different persons have interpreted the saying in different ways. Some hold that days are equal in number of hours, and this is true, for if by day we mean 24 hours, time, all days must be equal, inasmuch as the night acquires what the day loses. But others maintain one day is equal to all days through resemblance, because the very longest space of time possesses no element which cannot be found in a single day, namely light and darkness, and even to eternity day makes these alterations more numerous, not different when it is shorter, and different again when it is longer." So this is a little bit obscure, but he's saying here, and it's kind of hard to understand why is he saying this, like where is he going with this? But he's saying that, look, Heraclitus said one day is equal to every day. And some people interpret that as saying, okay, well, it has 24 hours, and that's the kind of basic interpretation of it. But he's saying that it's a resemblance of it. And this is something that I hold to be true, is I say how you live one day is how you're going to live every day. Meaning that the general pattern of the day is the same. One day is equal to every day. That if you do the wrong things every day, then you're going to continue to do the wrong things. If you say, oh, I'm just going to have a donut this morning, you're going to have a donut the next morning. It's just, you're going to make those choices over and over again. And so he's saying that, the same elements are found in the day, right? That the same things are going to occur in the day, right? That each day has a resemblance to another one. In verse 8, he says, hence, every day ought to be regulated as if it closed a series, as if it rounded out and completed our existence. This is where he's getting to now. So let's break this down a little bit more. He says, or we'll go a little bit further. Pacivius, who by long occupancy made Syria his own, used to hold a regular burial sacrifice in his own honor, with wine and the usual funeral feasting, and then would have himself carried from the dining room to his chamber, while eunuchs applauded and sang in Greek to a musical accompaniment. He has lived his life. He has lived his life. Okay, so I think we should probably go to verse 9 to understand this a little bit more. He says, thus Pacivius had himself carried out to burial every day. Let us, however, do from a good motive what he used to do from a debased motive. Let us go to sleep with joy and gladness. Let us say, quote, I have lived the course which fortune set for me. It is finished. And we'll continue going on, and then we'll break it down. And if God is pleased to add another day, we should welcome it with glad hearts. That man is happiest and is secure in his own possession of himself, who can await the morrow without apprehension. When a man has said, I have lived, every morning as he arises, he receives a bonus. So all that he's saying, and really where he's getting at with this whole thing, is he's saying, look, there's this dude, and he would pretend like he died every day, and his reasons for doing that was kind of ridiculous. It's not the right reason for doing that, but he had the right idea, and the right idea is that every day, the reason why we care about each day and this whole concept is that every day you should live in a complete cycle, right? So don't put off the things that you need to get done for another day. Don't live your life in a decrepit way today, thinking that you'll live it in a better way tomorrow. Instead, live every day as it were your complete life. Like you should feel like you have done the things, like every day you have lived to the fullest, not just of your time, but of your character. Right. So do the things, pretend like you're going to die every single night. And would you die a happy man? Would you die? Would you be able to say, I have lived, the course which fortune set for me is finished? Can you be content with that? Can you be content with just having this day? And can you also have felt that you have lived that day to the maximum? And then he's also saying that when every morning you get a bonus. When a man says, I've lived, when you wake up and you're still alive, you're like, hey, it's a bonus, because you don't know how many days you have, and each day is valuable. And if you get another one, that's great. That is a bonus. Don't just take it for granted. In verse 10, he says, but now I ought to close my letter. What? You say, shall it come to me without any little offering? But be not afraid, it brings something, nay, more than something, a great deal. For what is more noble than the following saying, of which I make this letter the bearer? Quote, it is wrong to live under constraint, but no man is constrained to live under constraint. Of course not. On all sides lie many short and simple paths of freedom, and let us thank God that no man can be kept in life. We may spurn the very constraints that hold us. Okay, so the quote here is this, all right, which is, it is wrong to live under constraint, but no man is constrained to live under constraint. All right, so what does that mean? That's kind of weird. He's saying you shouldn't live under a constraint, but you don't have to, and that's the thing about it. In fact, the one constraint that would constrain you the most, which is life, that one will be lifted. Like you will die someday, so you won't even live under that constraint. But no man is constrained to live under constraint. Okay, he says that on all sides lie many short and simple paths to freedom, and let us thank God that no man can be kept in life. So there are a lot of things that you think are constraining you that it's not necessarily true. You're not as constrained as what you think it is, and you can find those freedoms. If you believe that you're living under constraints, then you will find those constraints. In verse 11, he says, Epicurus, you reply, uttered these words, what are you doing with another's property? Any truth I maintain is my own property, and I shall continue to heap quotation from Epicurus upon you, so that all persons who swear by the words of another and put value upon the speaker and not upon the thing spoken may understand that the best ideas are common property. Farewell. So he leaves with a really salient point, and he's going to keep on making this point because people are so they're so territorial of their ideas, and they believe that, well, Epicurus said this. It doesn't matter. He's saying, I'm going to keep on doing this, okay? It is my property. Whatever wisdom is out there, it doesn't belong to someone just because they said it first or they said it and you heard it. And he's saying that so that all persons who swear by the words of another put value upon the speaker and not upon the things spoken may understand that the best ideas are common property. So a lot of times people put the emphasis on the speaker. It's what the person says. That's what matters. It doesn't matter who says it. If a fool says wise things, they're still wise things. If a wise person says foolish things, which happens occasionally, then they're still foolish things. Some people just take every word that a person says and believe it because of the person. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good plan in life. So be careful of what you listen to and listen to the words of it, not necessarily the speaker. Yeah, a good person who has wisdom can teach you a lot of things, but still be discerning about what they say. I'll see you tomorrow.